Won't go. Rebound Bosch. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
Ademeyer on the pick and roll. Blocked by Wade. This is good if it goes. Yes! Oh! He did it! To shot!
Walton can tip it. Bryant with the save.
Oh, you got to get a shot here.
Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Bang!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Boozers Basketball Podcast. It's been a while, fellas. How are we doing today?
Not bad. How about you, Neil?
Doing well. NBA's back. Can't complain. How about you, Panos?
Like you guys, I'm excited that the NBA is back.
All right. So
He's upset. We already know that.
yeah, I have a feeling I know why you're upset.
Next question.
I'm not excited either, honestly, quite frankly. But it's really early on in the season, so I have faith. If I was Panos, I would not have faith, but I have faith. So
Okay, so let's start with that. So the Lakers are 0-4. Let's break this down a little bit. I mean, relative to what your preseason expectations for what this team could be with the roster that they had, what do you see so far, Panos, with what the Lakers have been able to do through the first 4 games?
What they can do, nothing really. I mean, let's start with the best thing I think they're good at is their steals. I think they're like top 5 in steals in the league, if I'm not mistaken. What they can't do, they can't shoot threes and they can't shoot. I think they're dead last in the league with 3-point shooting at like 20 something or 22%. And their field goal percentage is horrendous too. So they're trash. Russell Westbrook doesn't want to come off the bench, even though he's coming off the bench tonight. AD is still the same fragile AD, except I think he's leading the league in blocks so far, which is nice, but it's expected.
he's out tonight, by the way.
Oh, he is out? Great. So yeah, same old Lakers. Nothing's changed.
AD's being AD.
Well,
Yeah,
they're
and
tanking to
if-
get Victor.
I was just going to bring that up because they're actually playing really good defense, which is completely being overshadowed by the fact that they can't shoot the ball. So there's really no path to win games if you can't shoot and if you're shooting the way they are. I mean, who's their third best player, Amir? Who's the Lakers' third best player right now?
Darvin Ham.
Their coach. Bring him back.
I don't know, honestly. Like,
It's probably Lonnie Walker.
I was gonna say, is it Walker or like cheerleader, like defensive extraordinaire,
Bev.
Bev, I guess. Like, just like I don't watch any Laker games, obviously. I don't have the time for that. But
I will say, even though they're shooting like crap, they are missing Thomas Bryant. I know it's not a huge upgrade, but it helps. They are missing Dennis Schroeder too. Again, not the best upgrade, but they are missing 2 players. Kendrick Nunn has been non-existent pretty much this whole season as well. So, I mean, it's only 4 games. What am I saying? But yeah.
Schroeder at least provides some sort of offensive threat, which is something that they need.
Yeah. We'll see.
So is the play-in even a possibility? Do you think they can get to the 10 seed with this roster, or are they going to have to make some sort of dramatic move?
I mean, it's still early, right? So they can probably, with those 2 players coming back, they can fight for the play-in. I'm not saying they're a lock for the play-in. I mean, LeBron's going to be 38 this year. He's getting another year older, so it's, like, can't like rely on him to do everything. He's just going to break Kareem's record, and we might get the play-in. Or you're going to go try and tank and get Victor and still have LeBron James on your team next year with AD. I'd probably go for the number 1 pick. But wait, that pick's not even ours. So it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, you're right. And you did bring up a good point about LeBron breaking Kareem's record. I think he'll probably just try to hunt stats this year. He's going to put up 30 every game and then just break the record and celebrate about that. But I don't even see him contending for the play-in because the West looks pretty deep right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even talking about Sacramento struggling, Portland looks better. They're off to a nice start. It's still early, so we'll have to see if that's legit or not. But all the teams that we thought would be there are there. Like we got the Pelicans, the Mavs solidifying what they did last year, Golden State at the top. Clippers have looked a little shaky, but we can put that for a discussion for later because I want to move to Amir now, who had the privilege of going to the Heat Warriors game yesterday. How did the Heat look when they played the champs yesterday?
I mean, technically not bad. Like they were sticking around and playing pretty well for the first 3 quarters and just couldn't hang in the fourth. Their defense is not as good as it was last year, and their offense is dog shit. Lakers are ranked last, Panos 30th. The Heat are 27th, so not too far behind. So just having trouble scoring. Rebounds are just down this year. PJ Tucker was like really good for a 6'5" power forward who would box out a lot of the big guys, allowing Bam and some of our guards to get more rebounds. And he played bigger than he measures to be. So that was big. And then Dwayne Dedman's like washed and cooked. He's like just playing terrible. He's like our only actual big man I think we have on our bench right now that's not hurt. So just generally they played good against the defending champs, like on the road, back to back. Had a chance to possibly win, but fell at the latter end of the fourth quarter. But yeah, just disappointing, I guess. Just they didn't make any offseason moves last year, like in talks for KD, in talks for Mitchell, in talks for possibly trading for like a Miles Turner or just getting some sort of stretch four, which they desperately needed because Caleb Martin, a two-way player who I love on the Heat, is now our starting power forward, right? So it's like there's a gap, and we're 2-4, so slow start, but I'm still optimistic that we'll be good. But I don't think we're going to win a championship with this team. We could contend in a sense, but I don't think we're going to be better than like a top 4, like a 4 to 5 seed, perhaps. I just think we need to make a mid-season trade if we want to be actually relevant again.
Well, Miles Turner is still going to be available. Indiana is going to deal him at some point. It seems inevitable. So that move is still out there, and Miami does have the assets to get him. They don't have the assets to get like a superstar like a KD or a Donovan Mitchell from the offseason, but Miles Turner is definitely gettable for them. So do you think that's kind of like their biggest need at this point, is that at the center position?
4. Bam's the center.
Okay, so Bam seems to. How would you rate how Bam is doing? He had a good game last night, but I haven't really seen too many of his games in detail. How would you say he's doing so far?
Mediocre, like aggressive more so, but just not shooting well to start the season. Not shooting horribly, but he's had like 2 good games out of 6 for like just mediocre games. Maybe one was like really bad. Like I think he might have had like a single digit game, and then a few others where he was scoring like 13 points, 12 points, 15 points. So his averages right now obviously are down. Averaged 19, 20 points a game last year, 10 rebounds, and right now he's at like 13 and 9 at this point. So he's shooting more. He's taking a lot more mid-range jumpers, which is good. Can open up his game. And people are defending it now, which is good. So he's making people honor it. So once they step in and have to face guard him, he's quicker than most centers in the league. So he can start driving, which he needs to do. He's not doing a lot of that either. He is doing it sometimes, but his drives per game are down apparently too. He was driving 4 times to the rack per game, and it's like at 2 right now. So he's not leveraging that jump shot that is semi-successful thus far. So it's a slow start. It's good to see him. He's taking like 16 shots a game. He was taking like 12 last year. So he's taking more shots. They're just not falling right now. And I just don't have enough power.
Can I ask you how you feel about Tyler Hero's contract?
Next question.
Doesn't even want to answer it. So it sounds like Bam is kind of settling for the mid-range too much. He's taking the right amount of shots, but maybe he should change the mix of shots and use that drive to the basket more.
Yeah, because he's like not amazing at post-up turnaround like game. So like either take the mid-range and then like go off the dribble versus like backing someone down or catching it on the block and doing floaters or like little hooks or anything like that. He's not shooting terribly, but I just think he needs to use his athleticism a little bit more and leverage
those easy baskets at the rim, draw fouls, get to the line instead of just jacking up shots, because that's like maybe a 45% proposition. But if
Yep.
you're driving to the rim, those are like 60, 70% shots that are going in.
Yeah, I think so.
So you mentioned that you still think Miami can get to a 4 or 5 seed, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have some injuries right now, so I think we can. Tyler Hero's been playing better, I guess, as a starter initially for the first few games. He had a really bad game against the Warriors yesterday. I think he had like 4 or 5 points, like 3 for 12 shooting. And the game before that, he had around like 14 points or so. I think the first 3 games he was averaging like 21, 22, which is what he was averaging off the bench. So he looked good to start off. And then the last few games has trickled off. I don't think he's bad or anything like that. I just think that if he's the starter, he needs to continue just being aggressive, but taking smarter and better shots, and just be more aggressive, taking the ball to the rack and being a 3-level scorer. And he was doing that the first few games. The last few games, I mean, he's just been shooting kind of poorly and just had a lot of turnovers. So I don't think we're going to be higher than a 4 seed unless he miraculously becomes Devin Booker-esque, and goes from, I think he's averaging now like the averages have to have obviously dropped with that 4-point dud and that 14-point game, but we need him to be like a 25, 26 point game per game score, which I don't know if he can this year 3. Like that's why we needed that Donovan Mitchell, because I think having a consistent 25, 27 point scorer, a third actual star, would elevate us to compete as like a 1 or 2 seed, possibly, even in this competitive East environment. But yeah, just at the level he's at right now, he's just performing similar to what he was doing last year, essentially, but just now as a starter. And so we lose that kind of firepower and igniter microwave type scorer like on the bench now. And so like our scoring's down because of that. And Victor Oladipo hasn't played. He was healthy. I was happy for an off season, and he's had tendonitis in his knee. And so I think they're being just like, not the knee he got repaired, but I think they're just being like insanely cautious with him with tendonitis. It usually takes a couple weeks. I'm sure less time with NBA staff and training, right? But usually it takes a few weeks, and it makes sense, you know, that the NBA season started a few weeks ago. He hasn't played yet, so I think they're just being super cautious. But I think once he comes back, that's going to help us with scoring off the bench. He's going to be in that Tyler Hero role, and he's going to be able to have the ball in his hands and be able to play make and be that scoring threat off the bench. But even so, I don't think a Turner does like anything, honestly. It might help us become a little bit better. I just think that he need like a legit third star, and was like hoping that we traded Tyler Hero in the offseason for like Mitchell, but didn't happen. So
do you think that bringing Hero into the starting lineup is also creating a drop in defensive performance along with the loss of PJ Tucker?
No, not as bad as, or not as much as not having PJ there. I mean, people are hunting him a little bit, but I think he's worked on his defense in the offseason, and he's gained a little bit of muscle and weight, so he's not getting pushed around as much. He's technically pretty quick. He's super young, you know, so he should have the energy and the motor to sustain the opportunity to play not only high level offense and spend your energy there, but also exert that energy on the defensive end. But I'm sure at some points, you know, people are attacking him. Steph Curry just freaking toasted him yesterday. Like every time he had the ball, like just attacked him and scored at will. So, but that's Steph Curry, the best shooter, one of the best point guards in the world, right? So, yeah, I think it's more of a PJ Tucker perspective.
And, I mean, the schedule hasn't really been too easy if you think about it. They played Boston. They were at Portland, who was 4-0 when they played them, and then they had a back-to-back against the Warriors. That's half your schedule against some pretty good teams, or that were playing well when they played them. Eventually, you'll start to see them play against some of the lower-tier teams in the league, and then maybe that's when they can start to find a spark. So Panos, Amir said that he sees the Heat around like a 4 or 5 seed. So I got 2 questions for you. Do you think the Heat are there in that tier? And if so, who are the 3 teams that you think are really definitively better than Miami at this point?
I don't think the Heat are like at best 4. At best, they might be like 5, 7, maybe like 6, 7 range. I mean, I'm looking at the teams right now, and like there's obviously Boston. There's the Bucks. Cleveland. You can throw Cleveland in there. I think they're going to be a really good team this year. They have Toronto still, and then you're looking down like Philly and Brooklyn are not going to play like the way they're usually playing right now. They're going to step it up too. So it's not an easy in for the Heat. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you think like 4 is a little bit unattainable for them?
Amir, you know, man, those teams, they're not going to be crappy forever. Like those are some good teams that I just named off. It's going to be super competitive in the East.
Yeah,
At
no,
best 4. That's not. I don't know, man.
I mean, the teams ahead of them right now, Hornets, they're better than the Hornets. Bulls, they're better than the Bulls. Raptors, Knicks, Wizards, Cavs, Hawks. I would put the Heat at with they have the same core that was the number 1 seed basically last year, except for PJ Tucker. They have 2 young guys that are supposed to be better in Bam and Hero, and Jimmy's still showing that he's great. So, Cavs might be better, perhaps. We'll see. Who knows? But I don't think the Hawks are going to continue to be great. I don't know. We'll see. I could be wrong there, but
the Hawks did get better defensively with DeJounte Murray, though. Like he's looked really solid for him, and I thought they were going to suck with that little lineup, but
yeah,
he's paid off so far. And like we don't even mention the teams behind him. It's just the only teams like 76ers and the Nets. Like they can't.
Who's more likely to get going right now, Philly or Brooklyn?
Oh, dude, that's such a bad. I don't know. Like the Nets are not good at all. Like there was like a stat out there with KD. I was like a plus and minus, and he's like -30. Ben Simmons is terrible too. Like,
I mean, his time on the floor, he's a minus.
Yeah, he's a -30.
I think it's the worst in the league.
Yeah, it's
KD has the worst plus minus in the league.
That's worse than Dwayne Dedmon. I was talking about. He's -25. That doesn't make any sense.
And like Simmons is not the same Simmons that he was in Philly, where he can go yam on it, like just driving and dunk and like bully people around. He's like mentally he's not there anymore. Like he airballed a layup.
I saw that.
So I don't know. Like, is Kyrie going to take time off? Maybe. Philly,
so it sounds like your answer is Philly is more likely to get it going right now.
Yeah, I mean James Harden, you have to give him credit. Like during the offseason, he put in time and work, and he slimmed down a bit. It's just, can they get what's the stud? The other good player, Maxey.
Yeah,
Maxey's had some good games. The thing I thought was interesting in the early going is Joel Embiid doesn't really look like a player that can compete for the MVP. He was someone who's finished second in the MVP race the last 2 years, and really Jokic is unlikely to win it a third in a row. They just don't do that. So that kind of put Embiid in the tier with maybe Luka and Giannis as really the true favorites to win the MVP award. And out of those 3, he's clearly not playing at the same level as those other 2 guys. So I thought that was kind of interesting because you saw Harden take some major sacrifices to really build this roster up. And in the preseason, a lot of people were drinking the Kool-Aid on the 76ers. They said they could maybe even make a run to the finals, which I never really put a lot of stock into. During the playoffs last year, we had conversations about this. I've always felt like Philly's ceiling is like a conference semifinals team. I don't even think they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I would put Boston and Milwaukee clearly over them.
Oh yeah.
Even if Embiid is running on all cylinders. And now you're seeing an Embiid that's not an MVP candidate. So I still have a lot of concerns about Philly, but Brooklyn has looked like a train wreck, and Philly does look more likely to start getting it going. So I'll agree with you there. Let's switch over to the Western Conference. We got the Clippers and the Warriors, who are anointed as probably the 2 top teams in the West. I think most people would agree with that. The West is very deep, but a lot of people were looking forward to seeing the Clippers kind of get back whole with Kawhi. And now we've already seen him sit out a couple games. He's dealing with issues with his knees again. And they just lost 2 games in a row to the Thunder. So are we at a point where we should worry about the Clippers, Amir, or is this something that's just temporary and will resolve itself over time?
Yeah, I'm not too aware of the status on Kawhi. I saw that he sat out some games. Wasn't sure if it was like load management, but load management this early on the season versus restricting minutes or not playing him on a back-to-back is different. So what has it been with, like, has he tweaked his surgically repaired knee, or what's the issue with that there?
Well, so it started with the opener against the Lakers last week. He came off the bench. That was the first thing. So they were already exercising extreme caution,
Right.
putting him out there with bubble wrap. So he wasn't even starting from the beginning. And then he played a couple games, and then they had this 2-game series with Oklahoma City over a 3-night span. And then he didn't play the first game. And then I heard some news about some tendonitis in his knees, and they sat him out the second game. Now, to your point, I don't think he's going to play any back-to-backs this entire season. Like, that's just not going to happen. But
Right.
against the Thunder, you figured he would have played at least one of those 2 games. But then there was some news that came out that he wasn't going to play in either one of them, and they lost both of them. So the Clippers are now 2-3, and they're not where they need to be. But as we said, it's still early. So that's why I want to ask you, Panos, do you think the Clippers should still be considered in the top tier of teams?
I'm gonna say yeah, just because they do have Kawhi and they do have Paul George still. So I mean, that lineup I felt was strong in the preseason. They did add John Wall. Obviously, we know it's not the same John Wall, but I mean, it's still a little spark. You know, it's better than your average point guard, I think. So I've
still actually
think
been
they're
impressed with John Wall. I kind of had low expectations, but he's actually looked pretty good this year. That was a really good pickup for the Clippers. It just gives them another option off the bench. And
Yeah.
they're going to remain a deep team, so they can maybe lean on that while Kawhi gets back. And you're really just hoping that by the time we hit April, Kawhi is actually looking like the Kawhi that we knew from like 2-3 years ago at this point.
Exactly. I think they'll turn it around. It's a solid team. They have a good coach. I think we all knew that Kawhi was going to get a lot of load management coming into this season. And there was even talks about him coming off the bench before the season started, just to help him get going. I'm not concerned about the Clippers right now. Yeah, I don't know.
Paul George, I think, sat out a game too. So
yeah, he's like the first game against the Thunder. The Clippers basically sat everybody, George, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, and it was just pretty much their reserve set. But then you figure the second game of the series, they would come back, and I think George and Morris did play, but they still lost pretty convincingly. Let's turn it over to the Warriors real quick. How do you feel about this? I've been seeing Moses Moody get a lot of run. We're starting to see some new players enter the fray. They lost Otto Porter to free agency and Gary Payton the second to free agency. And we're also starting to see James Wiseman get some more minutes. So Amir, do you think that these new cast of characters around the core 3, I guess 4, if you want to, we should put Wiggins in there. He's now makes that kind of like a big 4 with Clay, Dre, and Steph. How do you feel about these new players that Golden State's trying to build up through the rotation?
I think they're fine. I mean, they need some fresh legs and inject some youth into the lineup. And like the guys are not that old, but they're getting there. I mean, they're all 32, 33 years old. So like they only have a handful of years in their absolute prime, and they've been dealing with injuries, right? So Clay is not the same Clay. Like if Clay didn't go through those 2 massive injuries, I think he'd be a lot better. And I think the Warriors have been a lot better over the last 2-3 years, right? Not just last year. So I think it's good to get those young, fresh legs, and they're going to be the future of the team. So this will like prolong this potential dynasty, if you will, right? Like, and continue for them to have opportunity to still, you know, compete as contenders by infusing young players who are athletic with these 3, you know, 2 superstars. Excuse me. I'll still say Clay is actually, I don't know. Is Clay a superstar? I don't know. Maybe not this Clay, obviously, but they have a lot of star power. I think it's good to have that because in the next 3 to 4 years, this is going to be the future of the franchise. I think maybe their inexperience is maybe affecting their defense possibly. Like, I mean, I know losing Gary Payton's big, and is he the only reason why they're probably like not doing the best defensively, right? Compared to last year, they were like number 1 basically in the playoffs, like number 1 or 2 in the regular season. I mean, perhaps, but it could be the young guys, you know, still learning and not like rotating as well, playing could help with defense, and because they like to switch a lot, right? And play that kind of small ball. I mean, now with James Wiseman, they're a little bit bigger, but with Looney and Wiseman, but yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised that like they've dropped off so much defensively. It could be because of the youth, but
Yeah, I think to your point earlier about them being like 32, 33, they're actually like older if you consider all the playoff miles they've accumulated over the last
Yeah.
7, 8 years. And in terms of like the defensive effort, it's probably a result of they're probably just not locked in right now. I mean, they're just off a championship. It's the early part of the season. If there's any team that's probably going to coast and be able to get away with it, it is Golden State. So I think they're just fine. It's early in the season. But let's switch gears to, are there any teams near the top of the West that are really surprising you with how well they're playing or how bad they're playing? I'll start with you, Panos.
Let's see. Someone like a team that's surprising me. Obviously, I'm going to have to say the Utah Jazz and Portland Trailblazers right now. Like they're coming out of nowhere. Obviously, I didn't expect Portland to go 4-1. I think their loss was against the Heat.
Yeah, 2 days ago.
And then Utah. I mean, where'd they come from? I wasn't expecting that either. I mean, you lose Mitchell and you lose Gobert and wow, you're like 4-1. I'm like, okay, cool. Do I think they're going to keep it up? Absolutely not. Another team I like is who are we just focused on the West right now?
You could give us a team from the East.
I mean, no, well, I'll wait for the East, but
Okay.
I also like the Pelicans too. I already knew they were going to be good coming into this year. I mean, they got Zion back. But I like them in the top 8 this year, probably like the 6th to 8th spot, not even in the play-in. I think they'll pass that.
Yeah, they just took down Dallas without Ingram and Zion, which was pretty interesting a couple days ago. How about you, Amir? Are there any teams in the West that have surprised you either positively or negatively with how they've started?
I think Grizzlies surprised me that showing that Jaw's the real deal, even though it's only 5 games. They're 4-1. Jaren Jackson is Anthony Davis Jr. I mean, Anthony Davis is obviously way better when healthy, but I mean, Jaren
in terms
Jackson,
of injuries and susceptibility to get hurt,
always hurt, and like he's out for a while, right? But like when he's healthy, he's great. You know, he's like very good at defense, good rebounder, can score, hit some threes. Like they're missing a relatively big piece, and you know they missed him last year too. I like for a certain portion of the season, and they're still playing really well. And they've lost a few other players as well. I think it was like Melton went to the Sixers, and I forgot who else left. But
slow-mo, Kyle Anderson.
So they've lost some of that depth, but other players are stepping up. Josh showing he's like, who knows, maybe a possible MVP candidate if he can continue to be top 3 in the West. And he can average, 29. He's averaging higher. I think he's averaging like 33 right now, which I don't think it's going to sustain because again, there's 5 games that have played or 6 games in the season, which is like 4 or 5% of the entire season has been played. Right. So like all the things that we've talked about, like, it's just like, it's too damn early to tell. There's like 50 players averaging 20 points a game. You know what I mean? That's not going to last. Usually it's like 10 players, so yeah, I think Memphis Jazz is just, I think it's a complete fluke. I mean, they have all these white players that they love. Obviously, that's like a thing that loves having white players on their team. So they got Olenek, they got Markkanen, they got, who else do they got that's white? I don't know, but
yeah,
they find ways to replace their whites with whites, and so I'm the former Heat player, Kelly Olynyk. He plays good, but he doesn't play that great all the time. He's inconsistent, so he's just a scrub. So Lauri Markkanen, good young player, but he's injury prone, and every year this happens. He'll play good for like a month or two, and then he's inconsistent. He depends on his 3. He's a stretch 4. He doesn't really have a lot of skills outside of like his 3-point shooting, right? So that was a surprise for now, especially because they're in tank mode and trying to get Victor. Obviously, like one of the biggest teams raising their hand, like saying we want to tank, and obviously they did that by trading for 2 of their all-stars, right? And so this is I think the biggest surprise, right? Having this start, they have good pieces, obviously, with these players, but I don't think they should be a top team in the West.
Right.
Like they are right now, but again, it's been 5 games. talk to me in 15 games from now, and there's been 20 games played, a fourth of the season's done. We'll see where they're.
Absolutely. So let's move to the East. Panos, I know you had a team that you wanted to allude to as a surprise in the early going. Who is it?
I mean, it's not really a big surprise. It's I mean, I'm all in on the Cleveland like wagon right there. Like I think they're going to be a top 4 team, to be honest. Like once they get going, they have really good pieces. They traded for Mitchell. They have Mobley. They have Jared Jack. And then you have Garland, who was an All-Star last year. No, was he?
Yeah, I think he did make it.
I can't remember their bench players too. I want to say, oh my God, who else did they trade for last season? Spaniard dude. What was his name?
Rubio?
Yeah. He's still there, no?
I think so. Is he still hurt? I don't know if he's played this year.
Towards last year. I don't know. I thought he got traded. I don't know.
Oh, and they got rid of Colin Sexton, who went over to
Utah. Yeah.
So I think they have a solid team. I really like them, and I think they're gonna have good chemistry. One team that obviously like the 1-4 Brooklyn Nets. I don't think they're gonna start off 1-4, but I was hoping the Detroit Pistons would start off a little stronger than 1-4, especially with Cade coming into a second season. And they have Ivy as well, and they traded for Bogdanovich. I mean, I thought they were going to be a little bit better this year, but I know it's still early, but I hope they get going because I really think that's a good young core right there with Ivy and Cade, and you have Duran on the bench coming off. I think it's going to be an exciting team season or two.
So would you put Cleveland clear over that tier of Toronto and Atlanta? I think those 3 teams were kind of grouped together in like the clear second tier.
I would say that's tough. I'm going to say, yeah, that's a really hard decision to make, but I'm going to say, yeah, Toronto's still good. But I like Cleveland. I think they have a very good all around team. Atlanta, I'm not sold on them completely, even though DeJounte Murray has helped them out. And I'm surprised he has. I'm shocked that it's actually going well. But yeah.
How about you, Amir? Are there any teams in the East that you want to highlight as early surprises? It's only been 1 week, but
Sixers, obviously, talked about that. I mean, they got PJ Tucker, which I was pissed about. I thought adding him to that starting lineup would just bolster their defense tremendously. Maxi's like 21 years old. Like he had a coming out party last year in the playoffs against the Heat. Like was doing well this year. Tobias is like now went from like their second player to the third. Now he's their 4th player. Like if Tobias Harris is your 4th best player, like that's a pretty solid team, right? He's a pretty solid scorer. So they have the weapons. I'm just surprised. And Harden, to Panos' point, is, good for him. He slimmed down. An NBA player, worked out with, multimillionaire with all the trainers and, nutritionists in the world, right? But anyway, I hate him, but good for him. He did make less money to help get PJ Tucker, that 3rd year. That's why he left the Heat.
Yeah.
So that surprises me, honestly, that they're 1-4. Who cares about the rankings, right? They're like, what, 11th seed? Doesn't really matter. Like they're obviously not going to be an 11th seed. They'll be a top 5, top 6, probably maybe top 6, 7 at this rate. Who knows? But anything can happen. Nothing really surprises me else, honestly. Maybe the Hawks being 3-1, but who knows? DeJounte Murray, maybe can really build up that chemistry and be that second facilitator and scorer and defender that the Hawks needed. So who knows? But yeah, Cavs, impressive, 3-1. Garland's been out pretty much for the first 5 games. He hasn't really played due to that injury. Wizards are going to drop 3-1. Knicks are going to drop 3-1. Who else is up here? Yeah, I think those 2 are the biggest ones that I think are going to drop for sure. The Wizards and Knicks. They'll be like in the play-in game. I think the Bulls and the Raptors will be better, and we'll leapfrog those 2 for 5 and 6. I think we'll swap those. The Knicks are horrible. They're trash. They've beat the Pistons, Magic, and Hornets, and they're 3-1. Yeah. Good for you.
Thanks for doing what you're supposed to do.
You've done nothing. You know what I mean? You've literally done nothing. So I'm not surprised they're 3-1 because they play crap teams. I'll be surprised if they are a top 5 seed or 6 seed. Like that, if they're 15-6 or 15-8 or whatever it may be, like when we come back 22 games from now, then I'll be surprised.
Can I just say, can we get Luka some help, please? Just give Luka another star. That's all I'm asking
Christian
for.
Wood has looked good.
Yeah, but it's like the first 5 games.
I'm just gonna say one day we're gonna see Luka and Jokic on one team together, and it's gonna be one of the best teams ever created. I'm just saying it's gonna happen.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave the discussion today. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you very soon on the Boozers Basketball Podcast.